Ryan, you said Big Ten a couple times and it just rolled right off the tongue. It was like you
That's-
didn't miss a beat. It sounds like you're already used to it. You've already transitioned.
I don't think I'm used to it. We're still doing our Pac-12 podcast, or it's like formally Pac-12, but we're still going to cover the 12 teams. And we've talked to like the Arizona schools the last 2 weeks, and it's weird to see, oh, here's their Big 12 schedule. I guess for USC, that's been around a little bit longer, but now that all the Pac-12 teams are scattering, it's just kind of crazy. But I'm definitely not used to it yet, but that's what the focus is. Even this last recruiting class, Mark, where you're like, oh, those players are not going to play in their current conference. It was like they were already thinking about the Big Ten, or if you're Cal, the ACC, whatever it is, because that's where they were going to go. And that was kind of a surreal moment too, just kind of figuring out that the 2024 recruiting class was going to have nothing to do with the whatever conference you used to be in.
And so strange that the Pac 12 generally played, especially among the top 5 or 6 schools, plays its best football these last 2 seasons, probably going back to Stanford, Oregon, and the run that they had together in the early 20 teens. So the best brand of Pac 12 football, and it comes to an end.
It's really sad. I mean, I think we might get back there. I think at least with the Olympic sports, I don't know how sustainable that's going to be traveling all over the country as far as, for non-revenue sports. But yeah, it's sad because this was the year that they needed a couple years ago. If you had this year a couple years ago, then you're probably getting a TV deal and the league is probably around. But, poor management from the very top, Larry Scott, and unfortunately George Kliavkoff didn't really help out much there. But really, like the powers, like USC and UCLA, the 2 teams that left, they were pretty terrible for years. And if they're good, then the league is probably going to stick together. So it was kind of a combination of a lot of things, a lot of errors, a lot of bad decisions, and it took a while for for the conference to sort of rebound and be good again. But by the time they did, and they were really good this year, it was just already too late.
So, Ryan, I'm going to be personally fascinated when teams like, for as much as I didn't want this to happen, and I'm a traditionalist purist, I would like the conferences because I think it's even more than those schools and those programs being linked together for that long. It's just there are different parts of the country that have different identities, different values, different food, different music, just different everything. And that was the flavor of college football when you brought them together for interconference games and postseason games, that it made it interesting. But that has gone away to a large extent. So I will embrace the positive, and that's matchups like USC and Penn State, USC and Michigan, Oregon and Ohio State, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be intriguing. But the Big Ten has been so strong defensively in the last few years. To see an Iowa on the field with USC, and I know it's not going to happen this year, but it's going to be fascinating in regards to who's going to win that just battle of opposite ends of the spectrum. Do you see USC? I not becoming a different program, but possibly a different approach, whether that's strength and conditioning, recruiting, some different nuances because of competition in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's funny. I think so. It's you mentioned like Iowa, USC. It's sort of like it would be like mind blown. Like, oh my God, the worst offense we've ever seen and the worst defense we've ever seen. Like, what's going to happen if they played like the Holiday Bowl or something? That would have been great. But I think with they haven't made a change. Benny Wiley's still going to be the strength and conditioning coach, at least as of now. Nothing's been announced from Lincoln Riley. But what we've heard is that sort of Alex Grinch was the defensive coordinator, more into like the smaller, faster kind of guys. And I think that can change going forward. So I think some of the philosophies changing, maybe because, entering the Big Ten and you want to get, a little more bulky than maybe you were, but also having the fact that you're going to have kind of a different defensive scheme too. But they've talked about it, Mark. They've mentioned recruiting for the Big Ten and preparing for the Big Ten. And I think the Big Ten's going to be, it's going to be different for the Big Ten too, where if you're Iowa, you can really score 10 points a game or whatever they were doing and still win your division, because there's just not a lot of juggernauts in that division, and do something. And that's all going away now. So I think it's going to change. You had one division that was so bad, and it's just, you kind of like, oh, if you just did good enough, you're going to be able to accomplish something. you're not going to accomplish anything now because it's all mixed up and everyone's going to, it's not Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, all like in the same boat. Now it's spread out a little bit. And so, and you got these West Coast schools too, and Oregon's coming in playing well. USC, we'll see where they do. And Washington, obviously a national championship run. They're going to probably take a step back. And then UCLA is kind of a dumpster fire right now. We'll see what happens there. But I think it's going to change for sort of everybody, not just the West Coast teams going into the Big Ten, because just the format of the Big Ten is changing and all these new teams are there. But I think USC will try to, change things up a little bit, but they'll do what they do. I mean, they're still going to try to score a bunch of points. They just want to be better. When you have bad offenses and they've played, bad offenses were scoring on USC's defense, that means you could go into the Big Ten and those bad offenses would score on you too. So they got to get better, at least stop some of those bad Big Ten offenses from scoring on you. And then, whatever happens with the bigger games, but you can't let teams that aren't really good at doing something be really good at doing it against you. And that's what USC's been like the last couple of years.
And Ryan, I know other great quarterbacks are going to come into the conference, but I think it's a little unfortunate that we missed it by 1 year seeing Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, seeing those guys match up against those Big Ten defenses would have been fascinating.
For sure. I mean, that was a great group of quarterbacks and, all transfers coming in. So I feel like you can get back there, and we've seen, guys like Michael Penix go from, Indiana and then have like amazing success at a place like Washington. And once you've shown that you can do that, I think you're able to do that again. Now, Jed Fish, he's going to take over that Washington squad. We'll see what he's able to bring in. He's not bringing Noah Fafita from Arizona. We know that, but, bring in some other guys. But it would have been a great class to see against some of those, really good Big Ten defenses. But I think it's going to be kind of new, sort of new for everybody. It's almost like when Lincoln Riley joined USC, his message was like, hey, this is new for everybody. If you were a player here already, it's whole new staff. Things are new for you. If you came over from Oklahoma with us, it's, we're in a whole new environment. It was kind of new for everyone. And the established of the Big Ten will still be there, but there's still a lot of changes that are going on all at once. So I think there'll be some newness for just about everybody over in that conference.
And I'm sure you can imagine, Ryan, our viewers from the West Coast are making all sorts of claims that the Big Ten can't handle our speed and space, and we've got elite athletes, and they're not going to be able to handle it. And then our Big Ten folks, they're not tough enough. They're not going to be able to handle the weather. We're going to crush them. And you know what? The actuality is something in between. We've got really good football players in both conferences, a lot of talent, different styles of play that are taken to way stereotypical extremes. For one thing, it's neither one's to that extreme. And we're going to see evidence of both. We're going to see, I'm almost convinced it's going to be pretty much cut down the middle in regards to seeing evidence of, okay, here's an adjustment for the Pac-12 teams coming. Oh, here's an adjustment for these Big Ten teams. And we're going to see it based on different types of matchups throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's going to probably be somewhere in the middle. I mean, Ohio State playing anybody is probably going to be a lot of mismatches, a lot of talent, what's going on there. And then, if you're playing Iowa's defense, almost any offense you're going to have some troubles with. It'll probably be a different style of game. I think there's certain programs that will kind of dictate a certain style and other ones that can kind of adapt to, whatever the style of play is. And, if it's a track meet and Iowa happens to be in that game, they're probably not going to do as well. Ohio State can, and when USC was getting in track meets, that means their defense gives a lot of points. It's probably bad there too. So I feel like it's like the matchups are going to be different. And, when Purdue plays Oregon, it might look completely different than when like Washington plays Indiana for some reason. It just, that day it went a certain way. It felt more like a Pac-12 game, and the former Pac-12 team did better. Or if it was feeling more like a Big Ten game, maybe the Big Ten team does better. But I don't think it's some, blanket statement like you can't do this, you can't do that. It's just going to be a lot. It's going to be some different matchups and some more interesting ones. And I think week to week, you're going to probably see different results and, different things kind of rising to the top there.
Folks, please like the video and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. And of course, it's Ryan Abraham. Check out the latest there at uscfootball.com.